Hey, welcome to our virtual candidate forum, our continuing candidate forum, as we count down to Election Day, which is June 9th. I'm Frank Malloy with 13 WMAZ, along with April Braggs. She's President and CEO of Robbins Regional Chamber, tonight's sponsoring organization. And we're pleased to welcome now into our virtual studio our candidates for Senate Seat 20, and that includes the incumbent, Larry Walker III, and the challenger, Franklin Wetmore. Mr. Wetmore, thanks very much for being with us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules. Format is simple. You'll each have 2 minutes for opening statements. Then April will ask a series of questions. You both will get a chance to respond to those, and then we'll finish with 1 minute closing statements. So if you're ready to go, we'll start in alphabetical order as far as opening statements go. And that means, Mr. Walker, you will go first with 2 minutes.
Hey, April. Hey, Frank. And hey, everybody in Facebook land. Really appreciate the Robbins Regional Chamber and WMAZ for hosting this unique forum so that I can communicate with my constituents and talk about the issues of the day and their concerns. So look forward to visiting with everybody during this 30 minutes. I was born and raised in Perry, and except for the 4 years in Athens at the University of Georgia and a couple of years working for the Coca-Cola Company in Atlanta, I've lived in Middle Georgia. I married my high school sweetheart, Adrian, while we were still in college. She's been a tremendous teammate for me, and I wouldn't have had any of the successes I've had without her help and steadfast support. In Atlanta, we had our first child, and as we were starting to raise our family, we realized we wanted to get back to Middle Georgia, so we moved to Dublin. Had a great 5 years in that fantastic community. And later I was able to move back home to Perry, where I started Walker Insurance Agency that I still operate today with my partner, Brent Scooty. I've been involved in the community in various organizations over the years, very involved in Perry United Methodist Church, involved with the House and County Development Authority, the Perry Rotary Club, et cetera. And I realized in some of the leadership roles I had there that I thought I had a skill set to lead people and to bring people together and through collaboration and consensus to get positive things done for our community. And when Senator Tolleson announced his resignation from the Senate seat, I felt like the Lord had prepared me to run for that office. And thankfully, the citizens of Senate District 20 elected me without a runoff in a six-person race. So I'm very honored to represent the Senate District 20. It's been a pleasure, and my driving desire is to make Middle Georgia a place where our children want to come back to, have an opportunity to come back to, and raise their family.
All right, Mr. Walker, thanks very much. Mr. Wetmore, welcome. You have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
You guys it's a little choppy. Can you guys hear me? Well, I'm presuming you guys can hear me on your side. My name's Franklin Wetmore. I'm from Vero Beach, Florida. I lived in Florida until a couple of years ago. Came to Georgia, even though I was in the Georgia Air National Guard for 7 years. I've grown to love Georgia. Enjoy everything about this area of Georgia, the people that I'm involved with militarily and also civilian-wise. Georgia has become my second home. Sometimes I feel at home, but I feel at home at the same time. It's a very loving place. As for my skill set that I bring to the table, I ran companies in South Florida, as well as I'm in the 202nd Engineering Installation Squadron on the base at Robins Air Force Base. Had the ability to lead people and also help people along the way. I've been deployed multiple times to serve my country. Me running for the Senate is me just wanting to serve in a different way and serve the community. I have nothing at all bad to say about Mr. Larry Walker. I believe he's done a lot of amazing things for the community. And I wish him the best of luck in his campaign, and I'm going to do the best that I can do in my campaign. And we're two patriots trying to serve our country. And I believe either myself or himself, we will get it done. And that's what I have for leadership abilities. I'm here to make change. A lot of the things that I believe in, things that I want to do are a lot, they're drastic, but sometimes I feel drastic things have to be done to make change. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate everybody.
So you're joining us by your phone, and we do appreciate you taking time to be with us. All right, we'll now go to the question and answer session. April, you will be asking the questions. First question, Mr. Wetmore, you have first crack at it, and you have 1 minute to respond.
Mr. Wetmore, what do you think is the greatest challenge our state will face in the next couple of years, and how do you plan to address that challenge?
I can't. Sorry. I'm not sure who this question is for. I'm going to have to log back in because everything's too choppy. The screen's blank. So let me get back to you.
All right, here we are. We continue to move along, and that's some of the challenges that we face when it comes to the virtual forum sometimes, but we are pleased to be able to bring this to you. As we said, early voting started today, which is the Monday, May 18th. For those of you who are joining us live, it runs through June the 5th, and then Election Day is June the 9th. Of course, something to keep in mind is the legislature right now in recess, but the session is still not finished yet. That's correct, Mr. Walker? The session still has a ways to go.
Yeah, we suspended session on March 13th due to the coronavirus. We had to go back up there the following Monday, March 16th, for a special session, but we've been suspended since then, and we'll return to Atlanta in mid-June sometime. We haven't passed the budget yet, so we got to pass the budget before the end of June.
All right, Mr. Wetmore, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can actually hear you and see you now, so I apologize for any inconvenience for everybody.
No worries. All right, we'll go to that question. April, do you want to go ahead and repeat the question?
Sure. Yes. Mr. Wetmore, what do you think is the greatest challenge our
I can see
state
the
will
question
face
on the
in the
screen
next
about
couple of years?
the state will face in the next couple of years. That's the
Yeah.
question you're referring
Yes.
to?
That is correct. You have 1 minute to answer.
Okay, so my thing that I see in the next couple of years, specifically in the Houston County area, is the infrastructure of the roadways. I've seen it in South Florida where we went from small towns, and next thing you know, you're into hundreds of thousands of extra people living in the area. As you know, in the past 7 years of coming up here, I'm noticing more and more people that are on the road, but the roads have not kept up. Meaning some roads that are 2-lane roads should already be 4-lane roads, and some of the 3-lane medians, those should already be 3 lanes on each side. I see within the next year to 2 years, there being a huge traffic infrastructure problem here in Houston County. That's one main thing that's on my agenda that I'd like to actually work on, trying to have funding to actually grow this area infrastructure-wise, because I promise you there's going to be some issues within the next couple of years here. Thank you.
Mr. Walker, greatest challenge the state will face. 1 minute for your answer, please.
With the pandemic we're in, the budget is taking a huge hit, and so the budget is going to be the biggest challenge we immediately face. We had a red hot economy, lowest unemployment in recorded history in Georgia, about 3% unemployment. Now we're looking at about 20% is the latest figure I saw. The budget's going to take a big hit. That's going to be a challenge. We got to navigate that. We need somebody with experience and relationships, and somebody that's at the table like I am, to be sure that Middle Georgia does not have to bear an unfair portion of the burden in the budget cuts. After that, I think getting the people back to work, getting the economy back going is going to be job number one. And I intend to go up there and work tirelessly to do that.
All right, question number 2. First response this time will go to Mr. Walker, and you'll have 1 minute to answer the question from April.
Mr. Walker, What, in your view, is the greatest economic development opportunity for our state right now?
Well, where we are with Robins Air Force Base, that's obviously the economic driver here, the economic engine. And I think there's great opportunity to bring more missions to Robins and all the surrounding support businesses that go along with that. One of the bills I passed, I'm really proud of, is to establish Houston County as a military economic opportunity zone. And this gives us payroll tax credits that we can offer new industry to come here that are in support of the base. So that's going to be helpful as we try to get the economy back going and grow industry. Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan also wants to have Georgia be the Silicon Valley of the South. And I'm really excited about some of the initiatives surrounding the technology, using technology and our workforce development in that area and training our students on software development and software engineering. So I think there's a great opportunity there too.
Economic development question, Mr. Wetmore, you have 1 minute to answer.
Okay, I presume that's my turn. It's getting kind of choppy again here. Some of the things that I think would be a great for economic opportunity would be the school systems and also reforming the prison systems itself. Not only taking people that are in the prison systems and reforming them, actually teaching them some viable skills that they can actually use on the outside so they could be tax-paying contributors to society. Furthermore, in the school system is where education all begins before it leads down the path of incarceration in prison school systems. I think that better schools in general, I know Houston County area has decent schools here, but I think there should be more emphasis and money pumped into the schools so people learn more while they're there and learn more about etiquette and how to go about and navigate society. I know a lot of times it's about learning history and learning science and this stuff, but actually, how to navigate society as itself, proper etiquette. And I think that should be pushed into the school systems to keep people from going down the path of incarceration, prison systems, and inadvertently it contributes to the tax dollar. Thank you.
All right, we have a new question now. Mr. Wetmore, you will respond first to this one. April?
Mr. Wetmore, Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan took a 14% voluntary pay cut. What do you think about this gesture, and is it something you think the state senators in his chamber should also volunteer to do?
I'm not hearing the name being called out for whose turn it is, and I see Mr. Larry Walker's not speaking. I don't want to interrupt him, but I see nobody speaking right now. I actually think it's a great gesture to take a voluntary pay cut. I think that's a great thing, and that's not a people do that. I think that that's something that every individual inside of them should consider doing. It depends on their family situation. It depends on life in general, whatever hurdles come their way. But I do think that's a very special thing. That's a very beautiful thing when somebody can actually do that. And I appreciate that individual for doing that. It's amazing. Thank you.
All right. Senator Walker, your response to the question, please.
I do respect the Lieutenant Governor for doing that. His salary is around $90,000 a year. He works tirelessly. He ought to be paid twice that. But I do appreciate the symbolic gesture he's making there. I don't know. Do you guys know what we make as state senators? I bet the Facebook audience does not know. It's about $17,000. It's supposed to be a part-time job, but I spend about 60% of my time on it, at least during the session, 110% of my time. So if I were to take a 14% pay cut, I wouldn't hardly notice it, and certainly the taxpayers wouldn't notice it on such a small salary.
All right, we'll now move on to our next question. And Mr. Walker, you'll respond first this time.
Mr. Walker, Georgia has made great strides in passing military-friendly legislation in recent sessions. If reelected, in your case, or elected, Mr. Wetmore, what is the most important military issue you believe should be addressed through legislation?
Well, we've worked really hard on military bills. I think I counted the other day, we passed over 25 military and veteran-friendly bills since I've been in session. Since I've been in office since 2015. There's still work to be done. We need to continue to improve our licensing process for spouses that move into the state with the military spouse, make it easier for them to get a job and go to work without having to take a course or sit for exams when they're already trained to do that. The Joint Defense Commission, which I sit on, needs to do a better job, I think, of working with all 9 of our military installations to see where we have opportunities to collaborate and get more missions in Georgia. So I look forward to working on that.
All right, Mr. Wetmore, it is your turn now to respond, and you have 1 minute, please.
My main things that I'd like to see improved would be overhauling of portions of the actual VA systems. Being military and actually having, been in combat situation and being wounded in combat and having the transitionary type of period with healthcare and all the problems and being on orders and then coming, having to come off orders, and a lot of the paperwork, dealing with the military of having to, request, MedCon and all those type of things. It shouldn't be something that I should really have had my hand into while I was trying to heal, coming home from overseas, as well as the VA system itself. Many times I filled out paperwork and turned it in just to go back and turn it in a 4th time. To piggyback on that, also, when they send things in the mail, it has all your Privacy Act of 1974 stuff on there. It has your name, has your social security number. That's something that I'd like to see changed when they're doing mail or when they're sending you correspondence in the mail to get rid of those things, so you don't damage your credit and that's pretty much what I got to say about that. Thank you.
All right, next question. Mr. Wetmore, you will respond first this time, please. 1 minute once April asks you the question.
Mr. Wetmore, in regard to the proposed right to farm bill, do you believe the current state of the law needs to be revised? Why or why not?
I don't see Mr. Larry Walker talking, so I'm going to go ahead and speak on that. I'm going to have to actually forego that question. I'm not going to sit here and chase my tail and act like I know what I'm talking about. That's something I have to see in front of me to actually look it over, study it, and get back to you on that. I know farming is an extremely important thing, but like I said, I'm not going to sit here and talk about this subject when I have not done enough research into it. Thank you.
You ready for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I serve on the Senate Agriculture and Consumer Affairs Committee, and that's where the bill came to out of the House. I worked hours and hours on this bill, got all the interested parties together, from Georgia Farm Bureau to the River Keepers to the Georgia Forestry Association, Georgia Agribusiness Council, et cetera. We took the House bill. It needed a lot of work. I created a committee substitute that we have passed out of the Ag Committee. It's now in rules. I do think we need to pass it. Agriculture is our #1 industry in Georgia. And I think if anything we learned through this pandemic is that our food supply is critical, and having a safe local food supply is very important. And I think that's become more and more evident. So I hope we will be able to pass the right to farm bill.
All right, new question now. Mr. Walker, you will go first this time with 1 minute to respond.
Mr. Walker, how has COVID-19 changed your perspective on Georgia's infrastructure priorities?
Well, as evidenced by this forum tonight and the fact that we're having to do Zoom meetings, I'd never even heard of Zoom. I didn't know what that was. I thought it was an exercise class, but I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings. I think our broadband infrastructure needs a lot of work. We have been working on that. We did pass legislation to allow the electric membership corporations to get in the broadband business. We did that 2 years ago. We're starting to see some results from that. It's still a lot of work to be done. Of course, it all takes a ton of money. So we're going to continue to work on that. Also, the disparity between access to health care is alarming. Rural Georgians do not have the same access to health care as people in Metro Atlanta. And I think when you have this kind of health crisis, it really shows up. And in the crisis they've had in the Albany area with so many cases and deaths just shows us that we got to continue to work on our healthcare infrastructure.
All right, the infrastructure question, Mr. Wetmore, you now have 1 minute to answer, please.
I'm in agreement as healthcare is a severe and important priority. A lot of hospitals here that I've actually been through or nearby. It seemed like if something were to major hit the area, it's not ready for it. The healthcare seems a little bit behind its times in this area, and I've seen that from being hurt and dealing with stuff in local facilities. Second thing for infrastructure, I've noticed that the internet in this area, it's as of tonight, I'm seeing the questions on the screen. That's pretty much what I'm getting. That's just how it is tonight. But as for the communications in the area, in certain areas, they can be better. One thing that has always boggled my mind about Georgia is why most of their power and everything's running above ground when it's such a history of tornadoes and things in the area. I know it's a separate issue, but I do believe the infrastructure could be better, and also hopefully more companies will come in and actually have service for that. There's a lack of companies and competition in the area that I've noticed. Thank you.
All right, move on to our next question now. Mr. Wetmore, you will go first this time. You will have a minute to respond.
Mr. Wetmore, can you hear me? Yeah, Mr. Wetmore, this one's for you. Rural areas across the state face healthcare challenges due to limited access to hospitals. What are some ways we can enhance healthcare options for those living in our rural areas?
Presuming that's for me to answer that. I believe there should be some kind of government stipends to actually move. You have big hospitals in Georgia, and in the rural areas, obviously it's a lot smaller. It'd be neat to have some sort of government subsidied money that could be affixed to hospitals to give them little med clinics or med stops along the way. I think that's one thing that could actually help with this situation. It'll help in general in those areas. I know sometimes that's one thing that I've always feared. Like if I lived out in the middle of nowhere and I had a heart attack, how long would it actually take me to get to a hospital? That's partly why I like to be in the middle of the city. So I do believe that if there was some kind of government subsidies to assist with the hospitals, or at least some kind of investment from the state in having smaller facilities along the way, it wouldn't actually overburden hospitals if everybody had to actually rush to the main hospital at the same time. Things could be handled on a local basis. Thank you.
Mr. Walker, you have 1 minute to answer the question on rural health care.
One thing we've done to help rural hospitals is we passed a tax credit program to incentivize private donations to rural hospitals. We call it the Georgia Heart Program. Folks can donate to a rural hospital and get a dollar for dollar state tax credit. That's put over $125 million in rural hospitals. We also have passed Governor Kemp's application or request for an 1115 Medicaid waiver. That should help rural hospitals once that's approved and in place. We've also increased the reimbursement for Medicaid for OBGYNs to try to keep OBGYNs in rural hospitals. And we've partnered with Mercer to try to get physicians to locate in rural areas and give them a scholarship grant if they will do that.
All right, we'll have one more question from April. Mr. Walker, you will respond first this time with 1 minute.
Mr. Walker, with the economic slowdown, how do you plan to keep taxes low while rebuilding the emergency fund and keeping a balanced budget?
That's a good question. It's going to be difficult. We did pass, for the first time ever, a cut in our income tax 2 years ago, the top rate, and we doubled the standard deduction for individuals and families. I'm real proud of that. I'm committed not to raising taxes through this. We're going to just have to make some real tough decisions and use technology where we can to become more efficient in state government. But it's going to be a painful process. Thankfully, we do have the rainy day fund, about $2.7 billion. I'm afraid that's going to be depleted through this, but that's what it's for. But we're going to have some hard choices to make.
All right, Mr. Wetmore, this time you have a chance to answer. 1 minute for the question, please, about the economic slowdown.
Okay. My thing that I think it would actually. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Was he still talking?
I can.
Okay. So my thing that I'd like to see happen. Okay. Is it my turn?
Yes.
I think it's my turn. Okay. So one thing that I'd like to see is the tax situation. When a government has money, say they were allocated $10 million for a budget, and say they only spend half of that. If they were to send half of their money back in, typically an agency usually is penalized for doing so. For the most part, their budget will be smaller the next year typically. What I'd like to see is if an agency has surplus money, to shave that money off on an honor policy instead of just trying to spend it. Put that back into the actual governmental system to be reallocated with no punishment attached in a way, even though it's not a punishment, so they don't have less money being allocated for them the following year. That's the biggest problem with our government, is the fact that they keep spending money. When somebody's honorable and hands that stuff back, they get a smaller budget the following year. That's one thing that myself would like to see change, and most people in America would like to see change, including in Georgia. Thank you.
All right, we're now going to finish with closing statements. 1 minute. Mr. Wetmore, you'll go first. We go in reverse order of opening statements. So, Mr. Wetmore, close. 1 minute, please.
I'm not hearing anybody's voices. Just want to let you guys know I'm trying to read lips here.
Your closing statement is what they're asking for.
Okay, I saw his lips move, so I presume that we're about done here. So my closing statement that I have is, I'm not from Georgia. I'm from somewhere else. I appreciate everything that Mr. Larry Walker has done. I think you've done great in this community. I have nothing bad to say about you at all. Some of the things that I'd like to see that I have come for the community here to change up in Atlanta would be bettering of the foster care program, bettering of the VA system, crafting laws that fight discrimination and as well as reverse discrimination, teacher protections against assault and battery, right to bear arms, 2 term limits for Congress, heavier penalties for assault and battery of more than 2 persons. That's no longer just assault or some high school that says that, oh, somebody had a fight on a school bus. That's actually attempted murder to me. There should be heavier punishments for that. Child protections for crimes against children, including rapes. What I would like to see is somebody who hurts a child, that they get put in prison for the rest of their life and not allowed out. They have altered that individual's soul, that child's soul. That is what main things that I'm going to run for, things that I want to get done. I appreciate everything Mr. Larry Walker has done. I have an agenda that I want to do, and there's some things that he has mentioned that I want to touch on as well. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll close it out. Senator Walker, you will finish this up with a 1 minute closing statement.
I want to thank Mr. Wetmore and the kind words he said. I look forward to meeting him. I've never met him. Look forward to meeting him and working with him. He's got some good ideas we need to look at. I am in a position, I've been up there almost 4.5 years, so I'm in my 5th session. It takes a little while to learn the system up there. It takes a while to build relationships, get seniority, and have some influence. I'm in leadership in the Senate. I was elected by my colleagues as vice chairman of the caucus. I serve on the Powerful Rules Committee, Appropriations Committee, Health and Human Services, Agriculture, Insurance and Labor, Veterans and Military Affairs. I'm in a position where I can help Middle Georgia. We're in some mighty trying times. I'm honored to serve. I'm honored to represent Middle Georgia. I'm in a position to be effective, and I hope the citizens of Senate District 20 will see fit to send me back. I'm always available. I would ask them to contact me if they have any questions or want to get into further detail on these issues. And I ask for their vote.
Larry Walker, Franklin Wetmore, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Again, thank you for being with us tonight as we count down to Election Day on June 9th. We certainly appreciate the Robbins Regional Chamber folks. And April, we'll let you have our final words tonight.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to all of the candidates, as well as all of you watching from home. The replay will be available on 13wmaz.com, as well as our Facebook page and YouTube. You can find them both on our website, robbinsregion.com. Y'all have a great night, everybody.
Take care. Thank you.